when you count my respect for this and why I'm here, also count the hour to come and the hour to go back to Zamalek, in the intention and the importance I attach to this event. I really wanted to be here, both for this co-citizen from my region, but because as Anita mentioned, I do believe a lot in education, immensely in education, in a very comprehensive sense. I'm not only a former academic who chose finally to go to practice whatever she was taught and whatever she was teaching, meaning international relations theory, so I went to foreign policy making. But I'm a product in the sense that both my parents are university professors. So I grew up in, my childhood is marked by debates at home. Dad, not all very hard science, not social science, about the environment. Whoever is in this can know what you take home from, of course, the debates, some theoretical, some very pragmatical, some very power fights. And I heard Dad and Mom of 20, 30 years with the university politics, I would say, which are very much politics all over the world. I thought only in Romania, then when I met the first American and UK, I realized all over the world. I'm also a product, so the history made it, and everything that happened in Romania and the changes made it. I'm a combined product of Romanian education, UK education for a master in international relations, some American grants, and a French high school. So I could have a sort of an overview, not the background in living in so many countries, but I've been a bit through this system. And I just want to share 3 simple thoughts today. As a diplomat, which is a profession of a lifetime learning, if there is a job, there are several. But as a diplomat, if you stop learning, you're out of the market. I mean, you're not competitive anymore, let's say, in these very liberalist terms. But also as a mom, because we are not here only to talk about higher education. So my first thought would be, and it's also based a lot on Romanian experience, and I don't know enough or nuancely enough the Egyptian ones, just what I see in 6 months of being here, is that in Romania we tend to value a lot higher education, so university, graduate, postgraduate, and so on. And we attach socially and in terms of symbolism, perception, budget, less to elementary and secondary and then high school before entering the university. And then you can feel it, because I hear all my former colleagues in the university complaining of the quality of the students coming in, of course. Then in Romania, we only have a minister of entire education process, so from kindergarten to university and PhDs, which I don't know if it's a good or not solution, but it's always a university professor. I think only once in 30 years after our communist revolution, we had someone who was not a university academic, who was a high school, college teacher, let's say. And that speaks a lot. I think we have to invest as early as possible. So really, it's so important. If you want good students in the first undergrad year, then you have to look the whole way through. And there should be a link between university and college and even mid-school, it depends how it's named. And university teachers, not necessarily the more senior professor, should keep in touch and should make this bridge and be in contact with what comes from upstream, really. So my pledge is in favor of looking and having a structured dialogue with what comes from upstream, so you get to be the students that would be fit and that with whom you can work, and they get what they feel they need from the university. Then another thing, as a mom, I'm also here as a mom, as I said, is that regardless of the amount we pay for our kids to be well educated, and in Egypt I must say that Romania, it's public, so it was almost no resources allocated from our budget, but here it's quite expensive what we pay. That doesn't mean that you delegate completely education to school, in whatever stage it is. So I think it's so important to remain very engaged, not in the sense of doing actual homework instead of the child, but be with them in that process and build the holidays, for example, around what they learn in school, where you go and what you see. Be part of that thinking or creativity and things like that. It's good emotionally for both sides. It's also a lifelong learning, because we've been in school 20, 30 years ago, so you see how they are educated. So it's good for us, not only for them, but in that relationship, I think we should really not pay and delegate completely. So it's the teacher's problem, is the so on. We should be involved even if it's private and it's the best of system. And then really the other thing that we are incipiently doing in Romania, I'll see how, and this is my last thought, how Egypt is doing. I know other countries, I mean the Western developed countries are doing better, is again the bridge between company and the labor market and the university. So it's not, again, a fixed stage. You educate students and then they come to the labor market. But I'm in favor of companies getting involved in a dialogue that's permanent with deans, with teachers, to prepare the workforce, sorry to put that cynical in a way label, to have this adjusted during high school, during university years. So I think partnerships between companies and research institutes and university are the best, or one of the best ways to have students well prepared for what comes next, and also to have foresight and planning, because in high school and in university, you prepare students that will be in the labor market for 30 years, 40 years, then you need to sort of seize the trends 30 years before. How do you train them? And in that, I think the partnership between companies and university and high schools even, why not, is really a good way to go. Thank you so much for your attention.
That was very good, insightful. Thank you very, very much. Last year, when we also had some ambassadors who honored us with their presence, we opened it to questions. One question, just, we have time, two, okay, so she's, okay. If anyone would like to ask a question, we have time for 2 questions, the ambassador says. Question? No? Okay, David Pontic, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thanks, Your Excellency. I've got a Romanian connection as well, actually. I think it's Transylvania. My grandparents, in somewhere between First and Second World War, where part of their farm ran literally through the Romania-Yugoslav border. Sadly, typical sort of North American story. My dad wasn't allowed to speak Serbian in the house, or Romanian, because they wanted to learn English. So my dad kind of could understand but couldn't speak, and I've got nothing. Yep. Cheers, thank you. Hi, so the next section is going to have a roundtable moderation, and we've got some fantastic educators coming up. First of all, we have, and apologies if I pronounce it wrong, Dana Abugura. And Dana is it the CEDO of Medicine? Oh, from Maruf Education, based in Riyadh. And then Ross Little, the deputy head from Malvern College. David Meeker, principal from the Royal British International School. Hi, David. Mr. Dr. Paul Walton, principal at Nadine School, Bahrain. And a colleague of mine, Catherine Spencer, head of school at GEMS International School, Cairo. And we'll get you a seat somewhere, Catherine. So the topic is the future of education, developing the future of education. And happy to take some questions from the floor, but maybe we will start, let's say, with Dana. And maybe you can talk about what you think some of the let's do with everybody. What's your biggest challenge if you had to name one thing about the future of education?
It is working, okay. As much as AI and technology is a tool of teaching and learning practices, improving our practices at the schools, but even though I think it is a challenge because people need to be technologically adaptable to what's happening, and teacher need to move from being fixed mindset in that into open mindset. So that's a challenge, in my opinion.
Fantastic. And if you can pass the mic over to Ross. Ross, the biggest challenge you think for the future of education?
I think for education widely, it's going to be one of resources. I think in terms of the number of young people we're going to have moving into schools. In some countries, populations are growing extremely quickly. That creates challenges in terms of being able to give the right environment for those students. It's great having this technology, but we have to remember that maybe not everybody's going to be able to access that technology, and there's going to be a balance in terms of what actually we can put maybe limited resources into in the future. Our future generations are going to require, obviously, so many different inputs into them to make them develop as students. And I think the big challenge is actually, can we provide them with all the resources so they can grow, they can learn in the best way possible?
Yes, moving on from what you're saying, Ross, you know, I think that in most of our schools, our biggest challenge with technology, and particularly with AI moving technology ahead so quickly, is trying to figure out how to keep up and how to figure out how to use this technology to best advantage. But if we're not careful, as you're saying, Ross, a problem we're going to face worldwide is the increasing gap between the haves and the have-nots in terms of technology, which will translate into other aspects of have and have-not. And so worldwide, I believe that what has to happen with AI, with technology, is that one would hope a partnership of education and those developing AI would move towards making it accessible to large numbers of people, people who don't perhaps have the financial means for that, because that will then result in a huge upskilling of people worldwide and will kind of help to mitigate the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
And over to Paul.
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge is the use of time, because at conferences and presentations we see the list of skills that are needed in the future, those wider skills, and I believe that it's not all on the staff in schools. I believe it should be, you know, the extracurricular activities, the trips, the events. I mentioned earlier the sports fixtures, the performances, the time at home with families. So I believe the biggest challenge is to use that time effectively to get everybody on the same page and to make sure that the guidance that the students receive is aligned so that everybody is working together to then build those wider skills, because there isn't enough time in the school day to do it all. And I think that is the biggest challenge, is to bring that time outside of school, those experiences outside of school and experiences at home, and to use that time effectively so we're all on the same page to guide the students towards those skills. We all know what they are. You know, the list of jobs might change from presentation or year to year, but I think those fundamental skills that we all know are very important. I think we need to work together on them. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. I'll pass my mic over to Catherine. And yeah, biggest challenges you're thinking.
GEMS International School, where I am the head of school, is only 2 years old. We're finishing our second year. We opened our doors in September of 2022. And we thought we were a future-driven school. But little did I know, AI was on the horizon. I didn't see it coming. Did you? Okay. The economy, the tremendous fluctuations in the economy have caused us not only problems with resources, but retention and recruitment of staff. And I'll leave that for another. I think we all can weigh in on that. But there's another one that I want to mention, and that's student well-being. In the past 2 years, I want to remind us of some tremendous world crises. The war in Ukraine, the war in Sudan, and the war in Gaza. All of these have had tremendous impacts on our school environments, and I don't think it matters where you are in the world. You haven't felt this. You haven't felt the anxiety all of us, parents, students, staff, on these world crises, both sides of the fence, pro and con, they are reflected in our school environments. How would I have ever predicted that 25% of my incoming student population this school year were Sudanese refugees? Can you imagine the trauma that these children and their families brought with them? When we talk about developing the future of education, it's almost a misnomer because we don't know what's coming. But we do have to be somewhat predictive. These things are not going away. World crises continue to escalate. The economic situation worldwide continues to fluctuate. And technology is, the future is now.
May I just for a moment pick up from there? And yes, going on from what you're saying, as new technology has come about, as AI has come about, and one's looking at personalized education on the horizon, so many people have said, okay, so, you know, that'll be us teachers redundant. Absolutely not. We're actually more important than we ever were. We will use AI as a tool to get things done better. But Sudanese refugees cannot have AI help them with their wellness, with coping with their difficulties. Students, even in a situation where there's no war, but in a 21st century environment which is so stressful, which is so gung-ho and get ahead, need that human touch, need that coaching through life. And that is where teachers become even more important. We're not going anywhere soon.
Absolutely. I actually just last night I was having dinner with this friend of mine who's doing some of our work with positive discipline. And we were chatting about AI, kind of getting ready for today. And that was it. She's like, this is the one thing, positive discipline. This isn't going to go with AI. But it is kind of scary because like we're in year one of it, of this sort of AI stage. And I think I saw 5% of our Fortune 500 companies on average are cutting their workforce by 5% this year. What's it going to be 2, 3, 4 years time? And again, like we say, these jobs of the future. I wonder, and welcome thoughts from anybody, what are your thoughts on maybe what they will be? Because my fear is it's going to be a lot of these jobs. I think there will be jobs for teachers, but a lot of these jobs may go away. So what might some of them be?
Well, I know that a lot of jobs may go away, and that's where it's so important for us to be able to educate the upcoming generation to be able to pivot very quickly from one thing to another. I think one of the difficulties that we're going to face, and it's increasingly being spoken about, is that there will need to be universal basic, it's not called salary, universal basic. It's where you pay everybody for doing nothing because AI took over your job. The thing is, what will you do if you're one of those people who gets paid a salary to do nothing? I can see massive issues socially.
Again, just to add, I think that the jobs will change. There'll be new jobs created, and I think that there'll be new titles that we can't even imagine at the moment. But again, coming back to the point, I think that's where those wider skills, building, as we mentioned earlier, compassion, emotional intelligence, all those areas that will impact beyond the classroom, that's what I think the focus should be. Along with the academic skills, okay, great, but the wider skills and the parents getting involved, everybody outside of school getting involved and really bringing that to the fore, because they're the skills that the students will need to be able to pivot, to be able to, you know, change jobs every 2 or 3 years or so forth. So those skills need to be aligned with everybody, rather than using the words and saying, okay, with 7 C's and different things, what do they mean? What do they look like? How can a parent get involved? How can we help support the students who need to improve or have exposure to some of those skills? Because some are sitting on the couch watching Netflix and they're not gaining those collaboration skills, face-to-face skills. They're not really seeing compassion as they type something into a computer. They're not really feeling how to active listen to somebody, how to show that true compassion. So I think those skills become even more important. We're talking about them, but how do we really fit them into the whole educational system and get parents to support as well, because it's a big change.
Can I just say on
Sorry, that term that I was searching for, universal basic income.
just say, traditionally, when you talk to parents, talk to students, there's always been a focus on academic. If I talk to many of the parents of students who I teach, their key thing is what are they going to get in a particular exam. So there's always been that focus on academic. I think moving forward with a changing job market, as Paul said, it's going to be these soft skills which are going to be really, really key. I think one word which may be very important in the future is going to be maybe vocational learning rather than academic. So that is, you're providing students with the skills which they require when they go into the workplace or when they go into employment. Because it's great having thousands and thousands of mathematicians. However, if your local economy is based on a particular industry, actually it's really going to be key if you can have not just your mathematicians, but you're going to want your engineers, for instance, as well. You're going to want your chemists and your biologists, but you want them maybe to have the work-specific skills. And I think that's going to be a huge area of growth going forward. And I think it may be that we need to re-educate older people like ourselves in some instances, in terms of it's not just about making sure that you get a particular grade, it's what you can actually do, what you can demonstrate, and in order to make you an active member of the actual workplace. And the benefits of that obviously means that if you're an active member in the workplace, that's going to help your economy, and that's obviously going to then feed into the next generation in terms of like the wealth and the resources you can then put into education, healthcare, and other similar things.
I just want to add to what was mentioned, that if I remember 25 years ago presenting in a conference, I would just post, what are the jobs that's going to be new or disappear in 2020? And the same question goes again, what's the new jobs that's going to disappear? And we hear about blockchain, well-being expert, data person, whatever. So I think it's adaptability. So if we teach our students and ourselves about adaptability, so we can face change and we can face challenges. In 20 years, another people are going to be discussing the same topic. What was there 20 years ago? What's going to come? So I think adaptability, it was mentioned by the colleagues, is really important.
All of you, gentlemen, particularly mentioned parents in one way or another, and you mentioned re-education. I think it's very, very important to engage our parents in those conversations around empathy, diversity, and inclusion. If we are not doing that with our parents, they are not reinforcing those values that we think are going to be so important, not only for the workforce, but for compassionate global citizenship for the future. I know I have had to struggle with that this year in my school. Many talks with parents, many one-on-one talks, many newsletters home to parents about the importance of respect, understanding different perceptions, different views of the world, and engaging with the entire school community, not just the students, but the entire school community, staff as well, around how we entertain differences of opinion, differences of background, and respect and do our very best to understand those without immediately rushing to judgment.
Thanks, Catherine. Catherine made reference to who saw sort of the AI revolution coming on, and I was chatting with my friend last night about one of the somebody I love following, Itchy Boots, when she was traveling on her motorcycle around South America, and then she heard about this pandemic thing or something like that, and she got a bit stranded. And for one, I like to think I'm a pretty progressive guy, but that's changed things in a way that I wasn't ready for, and in particular, social emotional learning and levels of anxiety in students and stuff like that. And it certainly had to change the way I work as an educator, and I'm not sure we've got everything right in the schools that I've been involved with since, but we've tried. And I'm just curious to know your views, and maybe we'll start with Dana. Maybe you can share some of your views on how things you've done and things you think you could do in the future to deal with the changing social emotional needs of our students.
Okay, I think I'm going to talk about real practice that we adopted 2 years ago. And we came to the KG, which is the base of schools. And we changed the framework that we offer, and it's all based on skills: cognitive, developmental, social, emotional intelligence. And most of the parents did not like it at the beginning. They want homeworks, they want books, they don't want us to focus on skills. What are these clubs? Students cannot move from one place to another, etc. And after the implementation of all the social emotional initiatives for the KG students, specifically like on every single day with every practice, every subject by every teacher, the difference of the students' personalities, talking about themselves, expressing their feelings, going back home and talking to their parents, changed the parents' satisfaction, like major change that we saw at the school. Students reluctant to, KG is a stage where students would keep on crying, asking for their parents, and that just almost disappeared. The teachers are enjoying their time much more by offering the social emotional intelligence as a major part of every single practice and subject and an activity we run at the school level for this specific age. One last thing, that to cater the social emotional intelligence of those students, we hired clinical psychologists, like not regular counselor, just a clinical psychologist each of the schools. And you wouldn't even imagine the number of students who just walked into that clinic to talk about their feelings and how they express what they feel and what that support that can be given to them to overcome their circumstances, just like you mentioned with all the issues that's going around the world. And not even if there's a student who doesn't even have any of these issues, we have so many family issues and personal issues with those students that we never thought it's even existing. So yes, it's one of the most important aspects that we need to focus on.
Does anybody else want to share some of their experiences and plans for the future?
Yes, we mentioned the interactions for the students. I remember making a mistake during online learning during the pandemic when the kind of first wave come, and I was a part of this kind of process of trying to, buy as many solutions as possible, invest in different kind of platforms, and I think we're all kind of looked into providing as much possible, as many lessons and links, and all the different things were just overwhelming. But we thought we did, a great job by the fact that the more we provide, then it's going to replace, what the students are missing at school. From my experience working in kind of Europe and with colleagues in Asia, the feedback was overwhelming. The second wave hit, and then the realization was it wasn't about providing more work to do at home. People missed each other. We had families who missed each other. We had staff who said, 3 months earlier they were going out, setting up their bedrooms with kind of the latest speakers and headsets and different things to get comfortable to deliver the online learning. And then a few months later, they wanted to be in school. Can we just work in our classroom? Because they wanted to feel being in a building, even though you couldn't see everybody. They wanted to feel being in the building with people. They wanted to have that feeling of leaving home and going into school and then coming home and having that normality. And it was remarkable because after we kind of got back to normal, so to speak, the areas that were missing were the social interaction. So I think that we have to approach AI the same way. Our initial reaction might be wrong, and that's fine, because that adaptability that was mentioned, along with that reflection and many other kind of ways, if we put the students first, then we have to be ready to pivot and go in a different direction, just like we did during the pandemic. So I think that will really help the social skills.
I know we're talking very much about technology here and the future. I think one important thing for certainly emotional well-being of students is actually to be able to turn it off and actually not be fully connected to their smartphone, not to have a smartphone in their hand, not to be looking at various apps. It's way too easy to do that, to actually get the students to turn it off, put it in their pocket and be present in the space where they actually are, talking to other people, whether that might be in a school canteen, actually having a conversation with somebody else. It's these skills which are going to be really important. I think one of the challenges is the appropriateness of when we use technology, and also ensuring that actually students don't feel dependent on it. They don't lose those skills of being able to talk, interact, build a relationship with other people. And part of that, somebody who's a parent with a young daughter, that is kind of partially a little bit scary, actually, that I've got a 9-year-old daughter who's asking me for a phone already because half of her class at school already have a phone. And I think that's going to be a really big dilemma, not just for educators, but also for parents as well. And there's going to be, I think, a step change in terms of people's opinions. I think technology is fantastic, but also I think we need to bear in mind that for some students, technology is probably the worst thing which happens, because whereas they used to go to school, maybe they had some difficulties, because they're now connected outside of school. Some of those difficulties now maybe follow them to what once was a safe space at home, because they weren't connected to everybody or their friends or everything else. And I think that's one of the things, just be a little bit wary of.
Yes, Ross, so basically what we've got to say, what we've got to ask ourselves concerning any form of technology is, how can this technology help us to do what we need to do better, and not use it unless it does actually help us to do something better. Simple benchmark.
Yeah, very good point. And with that, I've struggled with BYO programs in schools at times, because the technology's got in the way of learning. And Ross, so much to your point about just switching off. And I thought of the activity Sinead did when you said it. And you know what? Okay, my circles were all apart. My biggest one was the future. The smallest one, significantly smaller, was that middle one, right? And how much are we in the now? It's always about what's next. I know, and Sinead, being the teacher she is going to probably keep me short for time. And I see a question, so we'll put this question out, and then we will finish. I'll ask each panel person after that to talk about one thing that excites them most about the future in education. There's some prep time. Tell me.
They're being taught in totally different ways. They're very adequate with the AI world and so on. But what they lack actually is the inspiration when they graduate. It's the inspiration by having these tools and knowing about how to bring about change towards the end. I think this is a gap into the K to 12 education system. We have the very good tools, but actually when they come to college, they are not really inspired. They're just focused. I read this statement once that we always bring about our kids by asking them, what do you want to be? But we do not ask them the proper question. What do you want to make? Or what do you want to produce? Or what do you want to change? I think given all the changes that we're talking about AI evolution, we're talking about, for example, wars and things of the sort. It's about that we teach our kids how can they change that thing. And because recently I've been trying to introduce an entrepreneurship program for high school students. I'm not going to name schools, but I've been speaking to a couple of schools in the region. And what was very frustrating, if I might say, when you speak to schools is that they tell us it's good to have an entrepreneurial project or something, or a curriculum or an elective, But actually, we're not ready for that. This is not what we are currently looking for. We have a system, we have an evaluation. So I feel that sometimes we may preach some things about what we want to do and what we're teaching our kids, but the, what can I say, the passion, teaching the passion and the inspiration part, I think this is something that we really need to work on. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all. Pierre Atalla from Savas Learning. One question I have for schools is, as publishers, how can we probably work closer together? Because in the end of the day, you guys need content. And we create the content. We're the top content provider in the US for US curriculum schools. But how can we be better informed about what goes on, let's say, in this part of the world and be more contextual, as Paul said? We have to be contextual. To be honest, whether we like it or not, our kids are ahead of us. Our kids use technology at home. AI is their best tool nowadays. And one question we're asking ourselves as publishers, do we give actually a composition now by a topic or by AI prompts? Where do we start? How do we embed this technology? So my question to you is how, or what do you expect from us as publishers in this sort of future outlook?
I think that's a really good point. And from my personal opinion, I think the content is at everyone's fingertips. So I think that the students are learning at school how to search for the content. I think as a publisher, the thing that I would get very excited about is to have those concepts that the students can come back to, because I think that the content changes so quickly, it's very difficult to keep up. One of the things that excites me is that the concepts, my subject's computer science, the concepts of computer science haven't changed. So from my point of view, it would be to change slightly the content nature of some of the kind of publications to then really kind of create a concept-driven approach so that they can then be referred to or adapted to the kind of the current needs in different schools, in different regions. That's just my opinion.
If at all possible, because we talk about cultural context, I think we all talked about those soft skills and the fact that it's always an addition to the curriculum. If those were embedded in content, you know, examples of well-disciplined students, examples of compassion, examples of empathy, examples of inclusivity, all within an appropriate cultural context, that our students are seeing that in action as part of the content that they're learning. They're seeing those role models, those examples.
Thanks. And a great question. I had mentioned earlier, we own part of our portfolio, Salal Telmiz, and we're having those discussions as well. I think it probably needs to be interactive as much as possible and working with supporting students in the various curriculum out there. I mean, one of the things we got into that market is Egypt has about 23 million school-aged children at the moment. Population's going up by 1 million every 176 days. It's a massive market. Of that 22 million, there is about 3 million in private, 20 million in the government sector. And there's great opportunities to access that. They don't have a lot of money, but 20 million students is a pretty significant market out there. So best of luck with it. And I'll go back to the last question. You can tell what excites our finance people about things moving forward. But for each candidate, if you can just start with what are you most excited about in education, whether it be in your schools or as a concept?
I don't think that has really changed for me over the years, because the thing that excites me most about education and about our students is impact. The possibilities for them, somebody mentioned it, the possibilities for them to truly affect change. And we are the role models for that. We're the drivers for that. We're the shoulders they lean on. They watch us every day, and they are picking up all of the vibrations that we're sending out into the universe, and they're following what we do. They're imitating. And if we can be those role models for positive impact, environmentally, socially, economically, within the world, that to me, year after year after year, is still the most exciting thing about being in a school.
Thank you. For me, what's really exciting is that we really change the lives of people. And not always to be positive sometimes. Unfortunately, it might be the other way of it. So changing the life of people is really exciting, and we as educators have a big role in that. So changing life of people still, since ever, till ever, I think this is a major thing.
For me, it's about opportunities. I think the future is going to be so exciting with all the different opportunities there are out there. From me as a person, I know that I certainly, I know certain areas really well. Certain areas, I'm definitely sure I don't. But I also know that there's going to be other people out there who are going to have these skills, these particular expertise. I can't wait to meet them because I know I'm going to learn. And I think if more and more people do that, I think the society which we live in is going to be a fantastic place. So for me, it's going to be about the future. It's going to be all the potential opportunities which are going to be out there.
For me, the most exciting thing is opportunities to network with one another, which tend not to come around as frequently as we would like. You know, they do in situations like this, but we tend in independent education at least to be a bit insular because we're competitors. And we should try to put that aside a bit more and talk to each other more because, you know, just looking at a discussion like this, a lot has come out of it. Just sharing.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the things, as we were talking, I was thinking about all of the face-to-face opportunities I had at school without the technology, and I think that developed wider skills when I was at school. But what excites me about working in schools now are those opportunities and collaboration that we can have right now with everybody. It's never been easier, like events like this, to meet people, to connect, to listen, to share ideas. It's never been easier. So I think that one of the actions moving forward has to be to, you know, get the contact details of someone you've been sitting next to and start modeling that collaboration. So let's answer that first wider skill today. Let's demonstrate the collaboration by having more and more meetings and connections with people. That, for me, has never been more easy with all of the social media that we have right now, with opportunities to come together like this. You know, it's never been easier to meet and to talk. And sometimes you may only need 3 or 4 minutes to listen to someone, and that's wonderful. We can do that now, when in the past it was very difficult to do that. So I think that's a real great opportunity, and I think it's never been better for us to work together.
Here, here, what a perfect segue. And if I can ask if we can put our hands together for all the panelists, very interesting discussion. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Siobhan.
Panel discussions are just so nice, aren't they? So much information coming from expertise, from people with international experience who can share so much. I think David Meeker is you, the principal of the Royal British International School. This school is a parent school of choice in one of the areas in Cairo, more precisely New Cairo, although accessible from somewhere else. And it is my pleasure to welcome David once again. He was with us last year, and I'm very happy to have you again with us this year.
Thank you very much, Sinead. 2 things. One is the clicker here somewhere. And then the other thing is, if I use this microphone, can you hear me? Okay? Good. Yeah, I'll be fine with that. I just want to get the clicker. Oh, that's where it is. We'll just wait a moment for the the thing to come up. I came to Egypt 12 years ago on a one-year contract. Still here. Have been with the Royal British International School since it started 5 years ago. Exciting to be part of something new that's moving ahead. We recently had our Pinter inspection and got BSO accreditation and did very well at that. So that's been very exciting and nice to know that we're pretty much heading on the right track. Oh, we're there, right. That heading looks a little different to what's in your program because last year when I spoke, I actually talked about personalized education, personalized learning. And I decided that even though the topic or the theme of this conference is developing a vision for education, I believe that we need to continue to do what we've been doing well and in fact better than we have in the past. And we need to look at the relevance of what we've been doing and decide whether it's still relevant for the future. I have brought along with me, thinking of the future and the future being now, my personal assistant, Veronica. So I'd like to introduce her to you now. Hello, Veronica, are you there? No, she didn't introduce. She's stuck. No, still stuck. See, this is technology. It's marvelous. You spend ages putting it together and then it doesn't work. Veronica. Let's see if we can do something to get it going. It worked when we tested it before 8. Can I go back a moment? Back to that slide. And there. What's the problem? No. It's a video, should be playing. Now she's gone away completely.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be able...
Voice is there. She was feeling shy. Didn't want her voice to... Didn't want to be seen, just heard.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be able to take part in this Education Experts Conference. David, thank you for including me.
Don't mention it. Right. Okay, maybe we'll go back to full screen now. With the way the world is moving and the amount of information that we have, we've long ago left behind the days of our parents and grandparents when there was a finite amount, or there seemed to be a finite amount of knowledge to learn, and we just taught the students things, and that was it. And we realized years ago already that we had to teach skills. And now we know, as we've been saying all along in this conference, we need to teach people to be able to change, to pivot. But we have to be careful not to leave behind skills and abilities that will still be useful going forward. And one of those is being able to study effectively for tests and examinations. I know that I thought a few years ago, I mean, why are we spending so much time learning facts? We should be learning skills more, and we are. But why do we have to learn for exams? Because now, excuse me, we have Google, and now we have AI, and we can find out whatever we want when we want. But, as this slide represents, it would be ludicrous for a surgeon doing open heart surgery. That's a very sanitized open heart surgery thing. It would be ludicrous for that surgeon to be standing there with a laptop or tablet learning how to do heart surgery as they went along. There's still very much a need for us to learn a body of knowledge about our different fields of expertise. But of course, we have to keep learning and keep being able to change direction and learn about new aspects of what we're doing. So, I'm going to ask Veronica, if Veronica's talking to me now, to tell me a little bit about a very famous professor of psychology at University of Virginia, professor of psychology, and who's particularly interested in learning theory. Excuse me. Can we try that way? Thanks.
Daniel Willingham is a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia. As a cognitive scientist, he is well known for his research into learning theory. He emphasizes that to master knowledge and skills, one must practice enough to be able to do things automatically.
Right, next slide, if I may. That's Daniel Willingham, and he famously said, don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong. That doesn't go down all that well with many of our students. They want to be able to open the textbook, read the work, close it, and pass the exam. It doesn't work like that. And part of my talk today is about reminding ourselves of that fact and looking at strategies for being able to help students to do well in exams and tests. Now, I've got more video, so let's see if it works. This is the Korean ladies archery champion, and in the video clips it shows part of a scene where she puts 3 arrows into the center of the bullseye, 3 arrows in a row from 70 meters. Sorry, can you help me again? I think with all these video clips we're going to have to do this manually. And that's the second. The third went in there as well. Can we go to the next slide and video that as well? Look at this. There are stages. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then 4. Every single time she fires an arrow, she does exactly the same thing, and the result is exactly the same. Okay, if you do exactly the same thing over and over again and you get the wrong result, then you need to change it until you're doing the thing over and you get the right result. And my argument is we need, we need in education to be constantly looking at what is our target and then working back from there what must we do step by step to get ourselves into a situation where we're hitting the target every time. And this also applies to learning for examinations. See, the thing is, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud with examinations. We all know, as leaders and teachers in schools, that we have to help students to cope with the modern world. We need the human warmth. We need to teach skills. But in the end, there is this goal that I have to do as a student well at the examination to open the door to the next thing that I'm going to do. And in Egypt, for all of the kids in independent education, it's university. All right. So we have to focus on that together with everything else. So why wouldn't we use strategies that get us there better than we did before, or better than maybe we're doing it now? And I just want to look for a few minutes at some strategies, because you could run a whole conference on this, and obviously I've only got about 20 minutes, and I think I used more than half now. But very briefly, following on from Willingham's theory, looking at understanding the content, writing notes, receiving regular feedback, verbalizing, spaced repetition, and active recall. That kind of reminds me of me when I was a high school student. There were some areas where I was pretty good, and there were other things that I didn't understand. And so what did I do? I looked like him. I have no idea what's going on here. Did I ask anybody? No. Did I look it up? No. That only came later when I became more mature. And so we as teachers, or we as leaders, need to remind our teachers to make sure that their students do understand every last thing that they're teaching. By asking questions, by getting feedback immediately. I'll speak about that in a moment. Because you can learn something without understanding it, but it's pretty useless and it's much more difficult. And so we as educators need to make sure that our kids know what we're talking about and they know the vocabulary that we're using. So that is an important thing as far as learning is concerned. And then even with all this technology, and it's useful to use technology for studying, even the latest research says that if you write things down, you remember them better than if you put them on a keyboard. And so encourage, even in the midst of tech, your students to write notes. And when they write notes, teach them a strategy for writing notes that involves a skeleton and flesh. You know what I'm talking about. Get them to continue to do that because it's important. Get them to do mind maps because you are doing that. You're writing, you're drawing, and there is a connection between the physicality of doing that and your thoughts. Somebody once said to me, feedback is the breakfast of champions. And that is why it is so important for our teachers to continually give feedback. Encouragement, but both correction and encouragement to enable students to move forward. It's part of the learning process. If we leave it out, then we leave a gap. Verbalizing. When I was a child, my parents, and we had those, we still had a telephone in the house, and our number was quite short because we lived in a smallish country. And I was taught to answer the phone by reciting the phone number. Hello, 37288. And I can still do it because I verbalized it. And the more you verbalize something, the more you remember it. And it's a scientific proof. You know, what happens is that then these days we have a university study that shows us that what we knew but we didn't know all along actually is the case. If you verbalize information, you learn it. How many of you have been a teacher who's taught the same lesson to 3 different classes? And by the time you get to the 3rd one, you are flying. You don't look at any notes. You can improvise as you go along because you really know what's going on. It's because you verbalized it. And so encourage your students to verbalize, to talk. Encourage them to teach their teddy bears or whatever, or to talk to a camera and teach a make-believe audience. It helps. Right, let's see if another video will work. Yeah, can we do that?
Thank you for allowing me to share, David. Have you ever struggled to remember what you learned after just a few days? You are not alone. Today, we're going to explore a powerful technique called spaced repetition that can revolutionize your learning process. Spaced repetition involves reviewing information at increasing intervals. For example, you might review material after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, and so on. This technique helps reinforce your memory just before you're likely to forget the information. Apply this technique to any subject, from languages to medical studies. Spaced repetition is a game changer for long-term learning.
As I mentioned earlier, and we all know this, students like to open the book, read it, close the book, they think they studied for the exam, they haven't, they don't remember it. Spaced repetition. If your teachers put in place a spaced repetition strategy from the beginning of the year when they start their course, and they monitor their students so that they follow it. Look, you'll always get some who fall through the gaps, but if you monitor them, what you do is set up a spreadsheet calendar. Have at the end of the spreadsheet the exam date, and then have all the dates. And when you teach a topic, put the topic down, and then add in dates in which they will be revised or reviewed. And do that all the way through and keep monitoring it, and I promise you the exam results will get better. Guaranteed. As long as you follow it up, that will work. By the way, if anybody's interested in something like that, contact me. I put together a spreadsheet that does that. And you see, that's where you're using technology, but the technology is just a tool. It doesn't magically make your children do better. It's just if they use it properly that it does. One more thing. Can we just have one more video on active recall?
One key component of spaced repetition is active recall. Instead of just rereading notes, you actively try to recall the information. This engagement significantly enhances memory retention. Flashcards are a popular tool for this purpose. Modern spaced repetition systems, like Anki or SuperMemo, use algorithms to predict the optimal time for reviews. These systems adjust the intervals based on your performance, ensuring you review the material just before forgetting it. Apply this technique to any subject, from languages to medical studies. Spaced repetition is a game changer for long-term learning. By spacing out your reviews and actively recalling information, students can make their learning process more efficient and effective. By the way,
we managed to get around the glitch, at least. Anki. Who knows Anki? Anybody know Anki? Anki, right? And then I don't know the other one, SuperMemo, but it's kind of similar. Flashcards. Now, if you want the very best flashcards, you write the question on one side and you put the answer on the other, and then when your students know the answer that they ask themselves, they put the card at the bottom. If you use Anki, which is free, it's virtual, it's electronic, and it has an algorithm that will help your students. If they answer the card correctly, it will use spaced repetition, but the spaces will be longer between when that particular question comes up. Really useful. Have a look at Anki. So it's modern technology moving towards an old goal, that is passing an exam. And I'm going to let Veronica have the last word. Thank you.
Efficient and effective. By the way, David, I thought I'd mention, we AI characters don't need any of the stuff we're covering in this talk. Just input the information once, and we remember it forever. Just saying.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, David. Very engaging. And because I believe in preaching with the example, maybe we should have done this with other children as well, but I have actually brought my child today to school, from school, not to school, to the conference, I want to say, because I think that exposure is very important for him, and it's a life skill that he might use in the future. And I have asked him to write the speech. It's going to be a minute, but okay. He's 11 years old, an alumni of MBIS, Mahdi British International School. And I asked him to tell us why education is important for him at this age. He's year 6, about to finish, going into secondary school. So becoming very aware of technology and what's happening in the world, and trying to become little by little more and more independent. So here he is. I'll let him introduce himself. Come on.
Hello, my name is Hugo and I turned 11 in January. I'm half French, half Romanian, and I've lived in Egypt for 6.5 years. I think education is important because in order to acquire a job to do with the brain, you need to achieve a level of intelligence sufficient for that job. My favorite subject is science because I find experiments both fun and educational. I also strive to become a scientist in the future because of how fun I find science to be. I look forward to how AI can impact education in the future. Thank you for listening to my speech.
All by himself, no help. And I think he will remember this forever. Thank you, Hugo. Just go sit down. Thank you. Yes. Our next speakers are one of our sponsors, Colliers. Are they here? Yeah. Please come forward. Would you like this one or would you prefer that? That one. Okay.
So, good afternoon. My name is Mansoor Ahmad, and I'm a director at Collier's, Executive Director for Middle East and North Africa, and being in charge of health, education, and PPP, and we've been in the region. I've been in the region for 24 years, coming to Egypt for almost 20 years or so. And I'll be talking about mostly the physical schools. There's a lot of talk before panels and other talking about AI and how AI and different technology will going to change the education. But I think the physical school are here to stay, and you learn a lot more than education in those schools. You make friends which are can be your friends for life. You basically develop your personality in the schools. You learn a lot of things about cultural values and moral values and other. So I think there's no doubt that AI and everything will going to change how the education will be delivered. But physical schools are here to stay, and I'll be talking about what is the market for schools in Egypt, and then we'll be talking to that what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and where it will take us, basically. So I think the important is, and also my main area of focus is international schools. So I was involved in getting the Kent College in West Cairo, two more British schools coming into Mustaqbal City, US university coming here, and many more which we are working now to basically, one of the key thing is in last 15 years or so, we help around 20 schools, international schools, which are up and running in Dubai, in Riyadh, in Muscat, in Doha, in Cairo, and other. So that is also one of the key things. So I think the thing is, why international education, or why international schools or institutions? So I think this is one of the key things of Egypt vision for 2030 is to enhance the quality of education. And that is something very important. And also we are talking about education spending. If you look in the budget, it was around 6.6 trillion Egyptian pound in next fiscal year. Also, there is a lot of basically shortage of teachers and classrooms, and the government is looking to allocate around 6.6 billion to cover appointment of 120,000, especially in medical. I'm talking about higher education here, medical education, teachers, and administrative roles. And looking at the Cairo, Alexandria, Giza, and other, we are looking around 13,000 existing classroom, and to renovate and build these number of classrooms. Also, because of devaluation and other currency issues and other, the international education is becoming very expensive if you are traveling outside. So by attracting those schools, a number of the schools are here also, international schools, to open their campuses, schools and universities, you are basically making it more affordable for the people who cannot, who can afford to pay international school fees in Egypt, but who cannot afford to go to countries like UK and USA and other. So one more thing which is also very important is that Egypt, and I strongly believe, we did work on some of the studies, but one reason or another reason they were not materialized. Thus, Egypt can become a big education hub for the region. And I'm talking about the K-12 here. Egypt is historically, in higher education and universities, for hundreds of years, people from all over the region used to come to Egypt. But I believe there is a strong case that Egypt can become international K-12 education hub, especially if you're looking at Africa and other countries. They have issues, currency issues, political issues, and other issues like not getting the visas and other. I was in UK a couple of years back, and many of the UK boarding schools were complaining that they have a drop of a student between anything between 20% to 40%, just because certain nationalities or certain countries, UK government is not easily giving the visas to the students. So I think that's a strong case to make Egypt as an education hub. I won't go into detail, but these are Egypt's Vision 2030. Education is important for economic development. They're talking about energy sector, energy overall basically, and energy sector, knowledge, innovation and research. These are the pillars which Egypt is focusing on to change the economy and enhance the economy to the new norms. Social justice, healthcare, education, cultural, environmental, and urban development. So all these pillars of Egypt 2030 plan, education is a must. If you don't have educated human force, you won't be able to achieve these pillars or these initiative or KPIs. Now, quickly about Colliers, international firm with over 50 years of operation, 70 years of operation. We are operating in 66 countries and 480 offices with over 19,000 employees. We are in the region for around 27 years. We have offices in Cairo, Riyadh, Jeddah, Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. I think I've been here in last 20 years, probably 50 times or even more to Egypt. So we have an office and we really like working in Egypt. We are probably one of the biggest health education and PPP team with around 20 people or so. And we have an office in Cairo where we have more than 10 people working in our Cairo office. The team, which is basically, I don't know why it is not that clear, but anyway, the team, our team, we have worked around 28 countries across Middle East and Africa. And again, it's not visible, the 2 dots here and 2 dots there. We have worked even in projects in Brazil and Ecuador also, from a Middle East office. We focus on real estate, health and life sciences, education and PPP. And in case of education and healthcare, we, from strategic planning to feasibility, from operator search and selection, asset performance management and other, we offer all these services. And in fact, a lot of people consider Collier as a real estate company, but in health and education, in fact, 80% of our revenue is coming from non-real estate advisory. These are the sector we focus on, nurseries, all them, K-12, boarding, medical colleges, special need, technical education, all of them which we have worked, fashion schools, hospitality school. One of the biggest thing we feel in Egypt is hospitality, which sector really need to improve the quality of human resources in hospitality, which requires a lot of hospitality institute. Other one is obviously the healthcare is also there. So these are the different sectors we focus on. I think we have done in last 10 years more than 30 studies in education sector. Now the K-12 market in Egypt. Now Egypt is very close to GCC, but if you see Egypt, as mentioned by many other panelists and other, we are talking about over 100 million population, where the entire GCC population is just over 50 million, so more than the double. Size of the market is also extremely big, 23 million in K-12. The second biggest, which is Saudi, is around 6 million only. So there is a big market. Even you combine all the GCC together, it will be less than Egypt basically. So very big market, and it's somebody mentioned 1 million people are born every 4 months or something like that. So obviously it is growing very fast. If you look at the population, so from 2017 to roughly 2% growth rate, and we are roughly 106 million now, which will be around 120 million with the 2% growth rate by 2030. The important factor is the school going age. So if you look at it, 11 million, 10 million, and so there's a lot of population which is school going age. And as we said, that a lot of new babies are born every year. One by one, this 14 million, 0 to 4 will go here, and there will be probably then 15, 17 million new babies will be born. And so actually this segment will keep on growing, and you will have never shortage of demand for K-12, be in the public sector or in the private sector. Important thing is that in case of, at this moment, majority of the students are in public sector, and very few are in basically, these are the schools, very few schools are in private sector. If you look at the number of students, actually it is more, very high percentage are in the public sector, and very small percentage, 9%, 10%, or so on in the, so 90% are in actually public sector, and 10% are in the private sector. So there is a lot of demand where the government is encouraging that education should be gradually passed on to the public sector. There is a lot of demand for growth for the private sector to increase their share. Even if they increase their share from 10% to 20%, that's a lot of new schools and classrooms and students. Looking overall Egyptian picture, we are basically looking at total 3 million extra seats, 3.3 million extra seats will be required in next basically 7 or 8 years, which is a very difficult. It's physically difficult to make so many schools. If it is investment is there, even if the teachers are there, it is physically very difficult, which translates into almost 1,600 new schools in next 4 or 5 years or so. So I think the demand is a lot, and it is physically not possible to probably achieve these numbers, although the private sector and the government sector, I don't need to say that because of the devaluation and everything, a lot of impact has happened on the private schools or international private school who want to come here. We are working on 7 or 8 schools who are actively looking to international school to open their branches in Egypt. They still think Egypt is one of the biggest market, but they want economy to settle down. Then they will look to, because there is, you are bringing international teachers, international investment and other, but when you invest that money in dollars, convert into Egyptian pound, and when you take out your money, and if there is something 50 or 100% devaluation, actually you are losing the money in dollar terms, but you are making money in Egyptian pound. So there is a lot of demand. We believe most of the investment will come even in the private sector from the local investors who can expose themselves to the currency devaluation and other things basically. Looking at private sector, we will be around 3 million students, and we'll be looking around 350,000, this across basically, across Egypt, 355,000 new seats in next 6 or 7 years, which translate to 180 schools. And we mentioned some of the very good, local brands which have homegrown brand and international brand who are basically, these are the local homegrown brand. Some of them we have worked who will be looking to fill this gap. But there are potential to bring in some more international schools. Now Cairo, obviously if you look at Egypt, you can't ignore the Cairo market. And Cairo market is because 20 million or so, almost 1/5 of the population live in Greater Cairo. So at overall level, we are looking around 6 million students, 5.6 to 6.2 million students. And we are looking almost 700,000 new seats, which translate into roughly, if we say that a school is, although the schools are smaller in Egypt, very few schools have 2,000 students and other. So we're talking about 350 to 400,000, 400 new schools. And these are the overall public and private schools. And out of which, if you see, again, if you talk about, I think one of the most important thing anywhere in the world, and especially Egypt and then in Cairo, when you're bringing international schools, normally their fees are higher. They could start from $8,000, $12,000, $15,000 per annum. So we need to look at how many people can afford. So So if you look at households' disposable income at Cairo, these are the 15,000 Egyptian pound is the annual household income for many houses. 87% are C category, which will not be able to afford any even local private schools. You will have another 12% which earn between $500,000 to 1.5 million or so, and there are less than 1% household who earn 2 million to 10 million and plus. So if you are looking at private school or international private school, you are targeting private school maybe 12% of the population, and international private school maybe 0.8% of the population. And same is the case with the disposable income. So I think the important thing is selection of the right location. When you are looking to basically want to bring a local homegrown brand, private school or international school, looking at the business plan and other, you will know that how much fees you will be charging, or if there is a certain brand, you will know how much fees you will be charging. You need to target the right location where there is enough population in the catchment area so that you will be able to attract, because Cairo is so big, you don't expect people go from one side of the Cairo to another side of the Cairo. So that is very important, and that's why successfully there are many homegrown brands who are basically offering quality education, which is equal to even some of the international schools which are off. That's why they are growing more faster than the international school. So important thing is that you are ignoring almost 88% of the population when you are looking for the private education is at a max 20% of the people can afford, and the affordability goes really down as the tuition fees goes increase, your catchment population really goes down. I think the key challenges are basically land and the ownership, construction of the building and other. Beside the operational issue, I'm not touching the operational issue. We're attracting the international teachers and other, that is there. But there are now, especially the Egyptian market has really come up with very innovative solution. So instead of buying a land, you can get land on 20 to 30 or 40-year lease. Lot of deals which we work on it. The landlord has invested land as the equity investment in instead of buying selling the land. Lot of schools, the landlords or developer has built the building also, and they have given basically the building on a long-term lease. So the operating company has very or zero actually expenses as far as construction is concerned. Many of the landlord and like the Palm Hills and other, they have created a JVs with the partnership with their school operators. Some of them, like the Kent College, we work on it. The two schools we are working on in Mustaqbil City, they have signed a management agreement. The international school, they are not basically putting any money. They just come and sign a management agreement, just like a lot of hotels, they sign management agreement. And obviously, PPP is a big initiative. Unfortunately, in entire region, it is a bit slow. It takes years to complete, but that's another thing which we think will going to happen quickly. Important thing, especially for Cairo, and we have issued a detailed report on it, and if somebody wants, I can provide a copy of it. What is the premium of social infrastructure on the real estate? So that is my colleague Mariam is sitting. We worked together on that report, and we looked at the data of around 15 years in Dubai and in Cairo, because Dubai and Cairo has in the region two cities where you have very established communities are there. the Palm Hills and all those Khatamia Heights and all those sort of thing, and in Dubai Arabian Ranches and other. And a lot of them have a school. And what we have basically, these are actual data where we have realized that having a good school in your community increases the real estate price by 10% to 15%. So what we do is, and that's why you have seen that a lot of schools are coming now in communities, that we convince the landlords or developers that you may give land or rent on the building to a school at a discounted rate, lower than what you should be earning on a shopping mall or something, but it will increase the price of your residential by 10 to 15%, where the benefit will be 10 times more than the rent which you are compromising. So I think that's, there's a whole report which we have written. And it's not just this, we were looked at, there was a report came from the Lloyd's Bank sometime back, 10 years back or so, that in UK, if a good school is there, the residential prices increase by, in 3-kilometer proximity, by 3 to 5%. But we found here in Dubai and in Cairo, it is actually 10 to 15% or so. So I think that's for international schools. Also, most of these communities which are being built in Cairo or elsewhere, the target market is mid to high income category who can afford to pay the tuition fees which normally an international branded school ask, or the tuition fees which a local high level branded school is asking. So I think that's, we see this already happening. That's the thing we are working on it, and we see that that's basically the future of most of the private schools. I think the challenges is, especially for international schools, securing and keeping qualified teaching staff here. I heard some of the, principals and other who've been here 10 years or so on. But there is still a lot of demand, especially the British teachers and South African teachers and other. They move from one place to another. They come and work few years in Dubai and other, then they move to Singapore or Hong Kong and Vietnam and other places. And now a big competition is Saudi. Riyadh, there are a number of new international schools that are coming, and with the opening up of the social, values and culture in Riyadh, there's a lot of that will be quite an attraction for teachers and qualified staff. So you will have a lot of competition, and that will remain one of the problem. And especially unless you are offering them a salary equivalent to dollars or a British pound or whatever, that's another challenge, is that you can't just offer them salaries in Egyptian pound because of the devaluation, while they can get a more secure income in other cities. Offering diversified facilities and services. When you make those schools, charge those fees, the parents are looking more than education. They are looking for sports and other activities and other music and all those sort of things, which has increased the capex and opex. Increasing and changing demographic. There is the parents and the children are changing very fast. All we are talking about AI and other. So you have to keep on changing or upgrading how you deliver the education. I think creating gateway to universities, from where how many students from your school goes to which university. That's very important, one of the key criteria, not just the local university, but regional and international universities. And obviously, to do all these things, keeping a very proactive relationship with the Ministry of Education and other relevant departments. Quickly touch base on that. one of the major issue in entire GCC and in Egypt is special need education. There are different models in Dubai that the students, special need students are, they are inclusive, they are part of the regular schools with shadow teachers and all those sort of things, where in Abu Dhabi they have a separate school. I think that's some of the 1 in 7 people globally suffer from some sort of disability, and there is not much emphasis. There are some good schools in or a center, I would say, in Egypt, but Saudis used to send a lot of their special needs students to Egypt and Jordan and other places. But we think not just in Egypt, across the region and globally, still there is a lot of shortage. There is more awareness, but there is a lot of shortage. And there is something which we need to really focus on, and it's all the countries in the region, and decide also that, I mean, they should not be, unless there are extreme cases, they should not be segregated from the regular students and other. So I think that's something which many of the schools are, sorry to say, there's a lot of, principals and bursaries are there. There's a lot of talk about it, but in reality, it is the quality, because it's expensive. Finding the right therapist and other is not an easy thing. So I think that's something which really need to be focused on. So I think the conclusion is that we are talking about basically there's a lot of demand in Cairo. There is emphasis that more education should be passed on to the private sector. Private sector, it is a considerably profitable business, let's put it very bluntly. And so the private sector is interested in it. There are hurdles with regard to the construction of the building and land and other, which is being resolved, gradually being resolved. And I think the last point is very important. Before, I think 2 or 3 presentations before, somebody presented a presentation where they said that I think 64% of the students who are studying in a school now, they will do the job which does not exist now. So I think that's why you need to look at the new, at least something which exists now. So this should start from the school level and then go to the, the colleges and other. As I said, we have done a lot of schools, which is all these schools are up and running across the GCC. And we are working on number of schools at this point also, especially 2 or 3 schools are interested to come to Cairo, but because of the current devaluation and other, they are just taking a pause. I am pretty sure they will be reactive again before end of the year. And that's about it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any question if there is any questions.
Thank you very much. A very detailed and very insightful report. Thank you very much for that.
And this presentation will be available to you.
Thank you
Anybody
very much.
can take it from the organizers,
yes,
basically. Yeah.
Yes, from Walderina. Ben will be in touch with anybody who's been here. We're running just a little bit late, and I know that people are getting a little impatient, so I do apologize, Ross. Is it okay if we do it after lunch? Shall we have lunch? And can I please have everybody back at 2:10? And yeah, we'll continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.